So here we are getting closer to the real purpose of discussing all this, and this is about governing complex sustainability challenges. So we are discussing governing governmentalization and so on in the context of sustainability. Armed with the approach suggested in the previous section, it's now time to engage with the governing of risk in relation to complex sustainability challenges. There are three particularly interesting common features of such governing that I want to highlight here. The author saying that of the book: multifarious fragmentation, location of responsibility, and the role of the market. First I discuss these features, then I turn your attention towards how they have become institutionalized. It is perhaps that the benefit of combining a more localized and empirically oriented governmentality perspective and new institutionalism becomes most visible. Okay, so spatial fragmentation, what do we mean by that? Borders structure the regimes of practices governing risk in relation to most, if not all, sustainability challenges. So risk is always an underlying factor we are concerned about. National borders are seen, or at least portrayed, as delimiting natural, social, political and economic entities and heavily influencing our perception and our ability to address any challenges. State or canton borders of federal countries are often also prominent in this regard, as are many provincial and regional borders, depending on the level of autonomy of the demarcated areas. Often it's about shared resources like a river that's flowing across, and of course the global atmosphere is a shared common, and so is the ocean, and so you can imagine all the examples. Also, local level borders structure many such regimes of practices, especially in decentralized political systems with an extended tradition of local self-governance, like Scandinavia, reaching as far back as the Viking assemblies. But in a state like India, where rivers are shared between states, then even the state boundaries, even though both are in the same country, are border structures that affect governing risk. All these borders are generally taken for granted today, but are virtually always historically contingent and could have looked very different. Just think about all the wars and associated changes in national borders over centuries, or how the colonial powers negotiated the borders for the colonized. India's borders, for example, Pakistan, East Pakistan, which became Bangladesh, and you have state boundaries which have changed over time, number of states have changed over time, and so on. The same goes for most subnational borders, which are at least as important for governing the lion's share of sustainability challenges. For instance, many North American state or provincial borders were drawn using a ruler and a compass, as were many county or municipal borders, using ruler and compass in North America. Not to mention the creative manipulation of electoral district boundaries for political advantages, which is called gerrymandering. So based on the population, there are supposed to be representation in Congress, but to win votes, to grab their part of the electoral share, politicians keep changing the boundaries, like electoral district boundaries. The borders of Swedish municipalities are also historically contingent. Most of them are identical to the outer borders of collection of parishes, which could have been drawn very differently, as most parishes were formed many centuries ago to provide viable congregation to already constructed churches. So that was a completely different motive on how parishes were defined. These borders are, as such, not only historically contingent but heavily parish dependent. So here is the state and provincial borders of the mainland of North America. You have Mexico into Central America here, US with all its states extending to Alaska here, Canada with all its provinces. They are called states here, they're called Are they called states here? I think they're called provinces, but anyway, you understand what we are talking about. So moreover, Becker, I jumped some text again. Moreover, Becker shows that the same reductionist rationality shapes how flood risk mitigation is also governed within municipal borders, with flood risk assessed and addressed for each planning area in isolation without taking into account the fact that their boundaries seldom coincide with hydrological boundaries. So you have nature doing something with the rainfall, hydrology, natural terrain to produce stream flows and rivers, stream flows coming together into the rivers, and then you have all these geographical boundaries based on religion or some other human factors. So implementing a detailed development plan may thus cause or aggravate flood risk in other planning areas and restrict future land use. In this context, the plans are key technologies that are intrinsically linked to the same spatially reductionist rationality as the borders. There are myriad similar examples, like the owner wanting to protect his beachfront property from coastal erosion by constructing hard erosion protection around it, multiplying the erosion of all his neighbors on the downstream side of the natural sediment movement along the shoreline. So this is how it works. Depending on the along-shore flow, if you build something here, you're going to start starving the flow and sand supply to one side or the other. Looks like flow is going this way and you are having more erosion on this side. You can see the difference in the beach property here compared to here, depositional versus erosional, right? So those are very common problems. Where was I? La la la. Okay, I went forward. This tension in rationality, as is alluded to in several seminal contributions to the social study of complex issues, and it is essential to note that there are no objective criteria to judge who is right. A potential way forward, however, is to ensure that what is valuable and worth protecting is made explicit, but then everybody has to agree on it. Informed dialogue has been suggested as a way to achieve this. Even if factors may perceive risks differently, even if actors may perceive risks differently, they may still share similar priorities. Wow, that's what makes it a wicked problem. And in fact, the terminology wicked problem came out of sharing space in Berkeley by two urban design professors. Okay, so moreover, such temporal fragmentation is also prevalent in how sustainability challenges we want to govern are perceived in the first place. The quintessential example is the determined set of time perspectives on climate change in IPCC's report, which have become fundamental technologies, thoroughly structuring the global dialogue without any real attention to what may happen after the year 2080 or 2100, except in particular academic milieu. So this is a discussion on how the global warming targets of 1.5 degrees C or 2 degrees C are set in a political consensus process. They are not scientific targets, but they are aimed at 2100, so below 1.5 degrees C or 2 degrees C with a 67% probability by 2100, and we don't say what's supposed to happen after that, assuming of course that if we keep it below that, then we stay below forever. Okay, well, there is orbital forcing still going on in the background anyways. Although it may be unlikely but not at all impossible that I am still alive in 2080, my children will be within the average life expectancy of their generation, and babies born today will be alive in 2100. We know this for a fact, yet it is consistently ignored in all attempts to govern climate change. We don't worry about future generations in a very explicit way. A goal to keep global warming under a particular temperature increase, ideally below 1.5 degrees C, is not meaningful in relation to sustainability if only valid before a predetermined year, which has been remarkably constant since the start of the IPCC as 2100, and thus provides a shrinking time frame for each passing year, because we keep missing the target to stay on path to 1.5 degrees C by 2100. We cannot claim to govern climate change successfully even if the projected temperature temperatures are below the goal at that particular year if the climate projections still point upwards at that time. So even if we hit 1.5 or below by 2100, but temperatures are increasing rapidly, then we haven't accomplished much. This oblivious pattern of thinking is based on a dominant temporally reductionist rationality that must be challenged. Well, IPCC has many other challenges to worry about anyways. So 3 temperature projections are all meeting the set goal at the set time, whilst only one provides a sustainable scenario below the threshold. So you have a threshold of say 1.5 or 2 degrees C here. This one ramps up and stays below by 2100 and then continues to stay below, whereas you have some that are still below the threshold at 2100 but rapidly growing past in the following 2100 or exceeding the target by some amount after 2100. Okay, so we'll come back and look at locations of responsibility. Where do responsibilities exist in this battle of governing and governmentalization if we are to worry about sustainability with all its uncertainties and complexities? So we'll come back and discuss that. I have to go have lunch because I am starving. See you in the next podcast.